Hi, this is my Spokane, the leader and the founder of Church Governance Solutions. Today I want to deal with the concept of praise and worship. This actually I'm passionate about, and I want to see it happening because there's nothing as powerful as praising and worshiping God. God can do everything, but there's something that he cannot do himself, and that is praising himself and worshiping himself. And that is why this is something that I am very passionate about teaching about, because it's very important that we do have very powerful worship in our lives. We do have very powerful praise in our lives, but also in our churches as well, that we can be able to teach others how to praise and worship. So therefore we need to ourselves understand the concept of praise and worship. But today I just want to speak about what has weakened our praise and worship in our churches, because you would realize that in the days that we're living in, praise and worship has been seriously weakened. It has been disturbed. It is not the same anymore. And I'm saying this because it's very important that we restore the praise and worship back in the church. And that is why I want to address this topic today. And I want to speak about what has weakened our praise and worship. Because when we know what has weakened our praise and worship, we'll be able to attend to it. We'll be able to sort it out and make sure that we get it back to where it was. And we definitely start praising and worshiping God in a proper manner. The first thing that I want to mention that has weakened our praise and worship is lack of criteria in allowing people in praise and worship teams in our churches. So therefore allowing people who are not saved at all to step up and be in front of the people and say they are praise and worship leaders. We have got no screen, we've got no filters, we have got no screening criteria, we have got no vetting criteria. We don't audition people. We don't actually check people actually lifestyle. We don't actually audit their lives, because it is very important that if you're going to have a powerful praise and worship, you need people that are praise and worshipers. People that can praise God themselves because they've got a personal relationship with God. But if you're going to be led by people that don't have personal relationship with God, you're basically going to have people that are singing but not worshiping. Because praise and worship will come out of the depth of the heart. It will come from the inner being of a person. And there's no way a person who's not saved, the person who doesn't have a relationship with God, is going to lead you in worship and in praise, because they themselves don't know what praise and worship is. And I want to emphasize this because I know there are many pastors that have hired people to be praise and worship leaders. People that are not even saved, people that are not born again, people that don't even know what is personal relationship with God, people that would not even understand what praise and worship is, people that know how to sing, but they don't know what praise and worship is. And this weakens the praise in our churches right now. Is because most of the praise and worship leaders in our churches, they're not saved. They don't have personal encounter with God. And I'm emphasizing this because I want to warn many pastors that are actually even paying people to come and sing on their stages. Rather have nobody leading in front if you don't have born again people that will lead people out of experience, out of knowledge, and people that will lead people with what they have themselves. If you don't have people like that, so please rather sing from within the congregation. Have what we call chorus leaders, for instance. People that are born again, that will start the songs. People that will sing because they've got personal encounter with God. You don't necessarily need a choir. You don't necessarily need a team in front. You don't necessarily need to have a band if you don't have people that have got encounter with God. And this is very important that we mention that, because that has actually nullified our praise and worship in our churches. It has destroyed our praise and worship completely in our churches. And you'll realize that it has turned into such a Mickey Mouse entertainment in the churches. It has turned into gimmicks into the church right now, where everybody gathers there just to dance and sweat and actually entertain each other and not praising and worshiping God. God is not impressed with our praise and worship right now, because we are actually involving people that don't have personal encounter with Him. And that is very important that we emphasize so that we can correct it right now and get back to what God wants us to do. Secondly, lack of prayer. Because you cannot be a worshiper without being a prayer warrior. You cannot be a worshiper without being prayerful, because prayer itself is actually a communication between man and God. So therefore, it is actually a tool to continue emphasizing or strengthening our relationship with God. Now, without prayer, therefore, our relationship with God is actually disturbed or distracted. So therefore, we cannot claim to be worshippers if we are not prayerful enough. Because it's very important that a worshiper should be prayerful. A praiser should be prayerful. Because without prayer, therefore, then you are not connected to God adequately. So therefore, you cannot lead the people of God to God that you don't know yourself. So knowledge of God should actually make you to be a prayerful person, and therefore you can lead people in praise and worship purely because also you're prayerful as well. So prayerfulness is very, very important in leading the praise of God. So I want to emphasize these things. They are weakening our praise and worship in our churches because people are not prayerful. And I want to emphasize that. The other thing is elevation of praise leaders into celebrity status. And that has become a big problem. Whereby praise and worship leaders today, they don't want to just remain as praise and worship leaders. They want to be celebrities. They want to be singers of note. They want to be famous. And that is why they go around charging people to pay them, and they want to lead in praises. And that is why then we find pastors hiring celebrities to come and sing in their churches. So we don't have worshipers anymore. We have got no people that praises God anymore. We've got people that are rented and hired to come and sing so that our conferences look great, our conferences look powerful. But I want to say this, that if there's no powerful praise and worship, the conference is not powerful enough. Because if people are just coming to sing and entertain people, that is not praise and worship. That will never really then make the conference powerful. So you need people that can worship, you need people that can praise, people that can lead others into a place where they've been themselves. And that's very, very important that we emphasize that. And I hope that helps you as pastors to look at that yourself. I want to also emphasize that it is very important that we look at this as part of weakening our praise and worship, that we sort it out, that we fix it, and that we make sure that we're having proper praise and worship that is great, that is actually connecting us to God. Focusing on choreographies, dances that are engaging in lifting, that are actually engaging in trying to say we're lifting God higher and so on, but we are focusing on choreography, dances, than engaging in lifting God higher. And we've seen this happening. And that is why we've seen people actually entertaining others, and sometimes with the so-called spiritual dances, the so-called choreographies, and so on. They have actually entered the church. And we've seen these things happening quite a lot. And that disturbs and distracts worship. And that distracts praise and worship. It makes people to focus on the entertainment more than in the worshiping and praising God. Remember, when we speak about praising and worshiping God, we're speaking about a personal touch here. We're speaking about a personal encounter. We're speaking about a personal relationship with God. So in other words, people should be focusing on themselves getting into the Holy of Holies, being able to praise and worship God, than to be focusing on the entertainment of the people that are there in front. Choreographic dances that are entertaining people. So-called spiritual dances that we see in the churches. And I want to emphasize that I know this would offend some, but these things, some of them are not necessarily. Because if people are to learn to worship God, they don't need to be driven by those so-called spiritual dances. And I'm saying this, and I want to repeat it, because I know that it is actually getting more and more in our churches right now. The other thing that is actually weakening our praise and worship right now is the conversion of praise and worship time into entertainment sessions of competing in dance moves. And you've seen this happening, whereby when it's supposed to be praise time, people are dancing and they were making circles, and others dancing in the metal and competing in different styles of of dancing. And therefore, people practice the whole week, telling themselves, I'm going to show them the new dance moves in the church. And when people come with such an intention, they're actually nullifying what we call praise. They're nullifying what we call worship. And therefore, this turns into pure entertainment sessions. And we want to warn leaders of churches to start getting the church back to the fray of praising and worshiping God, and remove these entertainment spells and sessions that we have introduced in our churches. We have replaced totally praise and worship with entertainment sessions, and I'm sure you would agree with me. You've seen that, and it's happening all over in our churches right now this season, and that is very much unnecessary. The other thing that weakens our praise and worship is people are called into the ministry of worship, have moved from the calling, and most of them, they opened ministries and they become pastors, and most of them are not called into pastoral ministry. And as I've said several times, that there are those that are called into being pastors or into pastoral ministry, but there are those that are not called into pastoral ministries. They're purely called into worshippers, into the priesthood or the Levite ministry of that need to lead people into worship, but they desert this type of a ministry. Most of them open churches, become pastors instead of becoming worshippers that lead people into worship. So people don't see worship as a calling. People want to see it. They see only pastoral ministry as a calling, and therefore they deserted the ministry of worship, and people move into becoming leaders of churches. And we've seen this happening several times, especially now, where people open, all the praise and worship leaders open churches, and they become pastors as a result. We've seen people converting the praise and worship into a platform of display of powerful voices. We've seen people parading voices. We've seen people competing in voices. And it becomes like a competition of music instead of leading people in praise and worship. And I'm sure we have seen these things happening. But these things are weakening the praise in the church. They're weakening also the worship in the church. And we have seen this happening several times. And I want to warn the church and say, please, let's make sure that we bring back the true worship. We bring back the true praise in the church and let people praise and worship God instead of the gimmicks that we do right now. Lastly, a strife and lack of unity in the praise and worship teams due to the spirit of competition. We have seen people in the praise and worship teams competing in music and leading and praise and worship and singing as well. They're competing with voices. They're competing who is leading today and who is not leading. And as a result, that has caused strife. It has caused a bitterness amongst the teams. And some are not cooperating anymore with each other. They cannot work with each other anymore well. And because of the spirit of divisions amongst them, the spirit of bitterness and strife, so therefore they cannot lead people properly into the Holy of Holies. Because how do you lead people while you lead people in strife and you're bitter and you're angry with your fellow worshiper? And therefore you cannot actually lead people into the true worship, into the true praise, until people become united in heart, become united in praise, you become united in worship as well, and they work together towards leading the people of God in worship. I want to end up here today. I'll continue with this topic tomorrow once more, and I would love you to join us as we'll deal with just the other angle of this topic. It is a very important topic. Please don't forget to also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure that you click that notification button as well, so that each and every video that we post for you, it will help you, that you will be notified, you'll be able to listen and learn out of these lessons. And may the good Lord bless you. Your host, Mike Spokane. Thank you very much for listening to us, and cheers for now.